Bear cub was found in a torn. Dollhouse. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The old Whitaker house stood at the edge of Pinewood Valley, where manicured lawns gradually surrendered to wild forest. The property had remained empty for months after the elderly couple moved to Florida, their once cherished garden now overrun with dandelions and brambles. In the far corner of the backyard, partially hidden by overgrown hydrangea bushes, sat a weathered Victorian dollhouse, a relic from when the Whitakers' granddaughter visited each summer. Rain pattered against the dollhouse's faded blue roof as dawn broke over the valley. The miniature structure, once a prized possession, now sagged under the weight of neglect. Its tiny windows were cracked, the delicate porch railing splintered, and a jagged hole gaped in one wall where neighborhood raccoons had forced their way inside. Next door, in the modest yellow bungalow, 8-month-old Lily Harper stirred in her crib. Her mother, Olivia, gently lifted her, still half asleep herself. "Morning, sunshine," she whispered, breathing in the sweet scent of her daughter's wispy hair. Lily's father, Noah, was already gone, called to an early shift at the hospital where he worked as a nurse. Olivia carried Lily to the kitchen window while preparing her morning bottle. Through the glass, she could see the abandoned Whitaker property, now under contract with new owners who wouldn't arrive for another week. Something moved near the old dollhouse. Probably a squirrel or one of those pesky raccoons, she thought. "We've got a busy day ahead," Olivia told Lily, who babbled in response, her bright eyes taking in everything. "Mommy has that deadline, and then we're meeting Aunt June for lunch." Miles, deep in Blackridge Forest, a mother bear frantically pawed at the earth. Her youngest cub, barely 3 months old, had vanished during the night while she foraged with her older offspring. For hours she had followed his scent through the underbrush, growing increasingly desperate as the trail led closer to human dwellings, a place she instinctively avoided. The cub, small and curious with a distinctive white patch on his chest, had wandered too far. Frightened by the howl of a distant coyote, he had stumbled through the darkness, eventually finding himself at the edge of the Whitaker property as dawn approached. Exhausted and hungry, he discovered the torn dollhouse, a strange structure that somehow smelled of food, likely from the candy bars neighborhood teenagers had eaten inside while using it as their secret hideout. The cub squeezed through the jagged hole, his tiny claws catching on the splintered wood. Inside, he curled into a ball, his nose twitching at the faint scent of chocolate and the stronger smell of rain. The dollhouse creaked around him, offering meager shelter as the storm intensified. Back in the yellow bungalow, Olivia settled Lily in her playpen by the sliding glass door while she tried to finish an article for the local newspaper. Lily watched raindrops race down the glass, occasionally slapping her palms against the door when thunder rumbled across the valley. "Just 30 more minutes, sweetie," Olivia promised, typing furiously. "Then we'll have lunch." The storm was passing, sunlight breaking through gaps in the clouds. Olivia's phone rang, June, calling to reschedule their lunch date because of a flat tire. As Olivia paced the kitchen, deep in conversation, Lily pulled herself up on the edge of the playpen, her curious eyes fixed on something moving in the neighbor's yard. With surprising determination for an 8-month-old, Lily pushed against the side of the playpen until it shifted slightly, creating just enough space for her to squeeze between it and the sliding door. The door, left ajar to catch the after-rain breeze, offered no resistance to her tiny fingers. For the first time in her life, Lily Harper escaped. Her pink onesie quickly soaked with dew as she crawled across the wet grass. The boundary between yards meant nothing to her, She followed her curiosity straight toward the dollhouse, where something small and dark had moved at one of the tiny windows. Inside the dollhouse, the bear cub trembled. Strange noises surrounded him. Voices, mechanical hums, a dog barking somewhere down the street. He missed his mother, the comforting warmth of her fur, the sweet milk she provided. He let out a soft whimper, too frightened to leave the relative safety of his newfound shelter. Lily reached the dollhouse, her chubby hands gripping the wet grass as she pulled herself forward. She sat back on her haunches before the structure, tilting her head as she noticed movement inside. With the fearlessness of infancy, she reached toward the jagged hole, her innocent babbling echoing in the quiet garden. The cub froze at the sound. His small black eyes peered through the broken window, meeting Lily's curious gaze. Two young creatures, both separated from their mothers, regarded each other with innocent wonder on that rain-washed morning, unaware of the extraordinary events their chance encounter would set in motion. The bear cub's nose twitched nervously as he caught Lily's unfamiliar scent. His instincts urged him to retreat deeper into the dollhouse, yet something about the baby's gentle cooing held his attention. Lily smacked her hands against the soggy ground, creating little splashes that made her giggle with delight. The joyful sound echoed through the garden, startling a pair of robins from a nearby bush. Inside the kitchen, Olivia ended her call with June and turned to check on Lily. Her heart stopped when she saw the empty playpen and the partially open sliding door. "Lily!" she called, her voice rising with panic. "Lily!" Racing through the house, checking every room, Olivia felt her chest tighten with each passing second. When the inside search proved fruitless, she burst into the backyard, scanning desperately for any sign of her daughter. The cub, startled by Olivia's shouts, backed away from the window. His small body trembled as he knocked over a miniature table and chairs that had remained intact within the dollhouse. The noise caught Lily's attention, intensifying her curiosity. With determined focus, she crawled closer to the jagged opening, her tiny fingers reaching for the splintered edge. At the same moment, Olivia spotted her daughter in the tall grass near the property line. "Oh my God, Lily!" she cried, running toward her baby. But as she approached, a loud crack of thunder boomed overhead, remnants of the passing storm, causing her to slip on the slick grass. Olivia fell hard, her ankle twisting beneath her with a sickening pop. White-hot pain shot up her leg as she tried to stand. "No, no, no!" she gasped, realizing she couldn't walk. She was still 15 feet from Lily, who remained fixated on the dollhouse, oblivious to her mother's distress. "Lily, come to Mommy!" Olivia called, fighting through the pain to sound calm. "Come here, sweetheart." But Lily, in the headstrong phase of early crawling, paid no attention. Instead, she pushed her small hand through the opening of the dollhouse, her fingers wiggling in the dim interior. The cub backed away, bumping against the dollhouse's rear wall. His fear battled with his curiosity as the strange, hairless creature's hand invaded his sanctuary. He made a soft whimpering sound, similar to the noises Lily herself often made. Perhaps it was this similarity that sparked the connection. Lily paused, her head tilting as she listened to the cub's whimpers. Then, in response, she babbled her own series of sounds, as if trying to communicate. The cub's ears perked up at this exchange, his fear momentarily forgotten. Olivia, dragging herself across the wet grass with one hand, while clutching her phone with the other, tried to call Noah. The call went straight to voicemail. He would be in the middle of his shift, his phone silenced. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she began crawling toward Lily, who remained just out of reach. Across the valley, deep in Blackridge Forest, the mother bear had picked up her cub's scent again. She lumbered through the underbrush with renewed determination, her remaining cub following closely behind. The trail led toward the edge of the forest, where the trees thinned and human dwellings began. Every instinct warned her of danger, but the pull of her missing offspring proved stronger than her fear. At the Whitaker property, a battered pickup truck rumbled to a stop at the curb. Garrett Sloan, a surly 17-year-old with a permanent scowl, jumped down from the driver's seat. His younger brother, Tyler, followed, adjusting his baseball cap nervously. "I don't think we should be here, Garrett," Tyler said, glancing around. "The new owners could show up." "Not for a week," Garrett replied. His voice edged with the arrogance of someone who knew everyone's business in the small town. "Besides, I left my vape in that stupid dollhouse yesterday. Dad will kill me if he finds out I'm still using it." The brothers cut across the overgrown lawn, unaware of the drama unfolding just yards away. Their heavy boots crushed the tall grass, creating a path of destruction as they approached the dollhouse from the opposite side. Inside the miniature structure, the cub had inched closer to Lily's hand, his fear gradually giving way to curiosity. The baby's scent carried no threat, no predatory intent. Only the sweet smell of milk and the fabric softener Olivia used on her clothes. When Lily's fingers brushed against his fur, the cub flinched but didn't retreat. Olivia had managed to drag herself within a few feet of Lily when she heard voices. Relief flooded through her. Help had arrived. "Hello," she called out, her voice strained with pain. "Over here! Please, I need help!" Garrett and Tyler froze at the sound, exchanging worried glances. They hadn't expected anyone to be at the abandoned property. Reluctantly, they changed direction, following Olivia's voice until they spotted her on the ground, her face pale with pain. "Please," she gasped, pointing toward Lily. "My daughter. She crawled away. I can't reach her. My ankle." Tyler immediately moved toward Lily, but Garrett hung back, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Olivia. "You're the lady who wrote that article about the high school party, aren't you? The one that got my friends in trouble." Olivia's heart sank. 2 months earlier, she had written a piece for the local paper about an unsupervised party that had ended with property damage and several underage drinking citations. Parents had been outraged, and the school had suspended several students, including, apparently, Garrett's friends. "That doesn't matter right now," she pleaded. "Please, just help my daughter." Garrett crossed his arms, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "Maybe we should let your kid learn some independence. Might make a good follow-up story." "Garrett!" Tyler exclaimed, shocked by his brother's callousness. "She's just a baby." Without waiting for his brother's response, Tyler hurried toward Lily, who remained entranced by whatever she had found inside the dollhouse. As Tyler approached, the vibration of his footsteps traveled through the ground. The cub felt the tremors and tensed, his momentary comfort shattered. He backed away from Lily's hand, releasing a frightened growl that was surprisingly loud for his small size. Tyler stopped short. "What the—" He leaned closer, peering at the dollhouse. "There's something in there." Garrett, his curiosity overcoming his grudge, joined his brother. "Probably just a raccoon," he said, reaching for a stick on the ground. "I'll poke it out." "No!" Olivia cried, though she had no idea what animal might be inside. Her maternal instinct was to protect both Lily and whatever creature had caught her daughter's attention. But Garrett, dismissing her concern with a shrug, approached the dollhouse and jabbed the stick through one of the broken windows. "Get out of there, you little pest!" The cub yelped in pain and fear as the stick struck his side. Cornered and terrified, he responded as nature had programmed him, with a defensive show of aggression. His tiny teeth bared, he snapped at the stick, his claws scratching against the dollhouse floor. Lily, startled by the commotion, began to cry. Her wails pierced the air, mingling with the cub's frightened growls. Tyler reached for the baby, intending to pull her away from potential danger, but his sudden movement only increased the cub's panic. In a blur of black fur, the cub bolted from the dollhouse through the jagged hole, directly toward Lily. Tyler stumbled backward in surprise, falling into the tall grass. Olivia screamed, imagining the worst as the small bear charged toward her defenseless daughter. But what happened next defied all expectations. Instead of attacking, the cub pressed himself against Lily's side, as if seeking protection from the humans. His small body trembled violently, his fear palpable to everyone present. Lily, her cries subsiding into hiccuping sobs, looked down at the furry creature with wide, tearful eyes. Then, in a moment that would later be described as miraculous, the baby placed her tiny hand on the cub's head. Her touch was gentle, instinctively comforting. The cub, responding to this unexpected kindness, quieted his growls and remained still against her. "Is that a bear?" Tyler whispered, his face pale with shock. "A real bear?" Garrett, for once, seemed at a loss for words. He dropped the stick, his earlier cruelty forgotten in the face of this extraordinary scene. Olivia, despite her pain and fear, felt a wave of awe wash over her. "Lily," she called softly. "Lily, stay very still, sweetheart." But Lily, unaware of the danger, had already formed a connection with the frightened cub. With the innocent fearlessness that only babies possess, she patted his head rhythmically, much as Olivia often patted her back to soothe her. The cub, responding to this gentle touch, gradually stopped trembling. The fragile moment of peace was shattered by a new sound, a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the very earth. At the edge of the property, where the manicured lawn surrendered to wild forest, stood the mother bear, her massive form casting a long shadow across the grass. Behind her, partially hidden by her bulk, was her other cub. But the mother's attention was fixed entirely on the scene before her, her missing offspring, surrounded by humans, pressed against a human baby. "Nobody move," Garrett whispered, his voice cracking with fear. "Nobody fucking move." The mother bear rose to her full height, her powerful forelegs pawing at the air as she released another warning growl. Her message was clear. She had come for her cub, and she would let nothing stand in her way. In that frozen moment, with danger looming and escape impossible, the fate of everyone present rested in the unlikely connection between a baby girl and a bear cub, a bond formed through innocence, curiosity, and a torn dollhouse that had brought them together on this rain-washed morning. The mother bear dropped to all fours, her massive paws sinking into the soft earth as she took a deliberate step forward. Her lips curled back, revealing yellow teeth capable of crushing bone. Tyler instinctively moved backward, nearly tripping over Olivia, who remained sprawled on the ground, her injured ankle throbbing. "We need to get the baby," Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. "We can't just—" "Shut up," Garrett hissed, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of genuine danger. "Bears can run faster than horses. We'll never outrun her with a baby." Olivia's mind raced, fueled by maternal desperation. Every parenting book, every wildlife documentary she had ever seen flashed through her thoughts, offering contradictory advice. Play dead, fight back, make noise, stay quiet. None of it seemed applicable to this impossible scenario. Her immobile body, her baby sitting just feet away with a bear cub pressed against her, and an angry mother bear advancing toward them all. "Lily," she called softly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Look at Mommy, sweetheart." But Lily's attention remained fixed on the cub nestled against her side. With delighted fascination, she patted his head again, her chubby fingers tangling in his coarse fur. The cub, despite his mother's threatening presence, made no move to leave the baby's side. It was as if he had found a kindred spirit in this small human, another young creature exploring a world too large and complex for either to understand. The mother bear hesitated, her primal instinct to attack countered by confusion at the scene before her. Her cub, rather than running to her, remained beside the human infant, showing no signs of distress. She released a low moan, calling to her offspring. The cub's ears perked up at his mother's call, but still he didn't move. Instead, he pressed closer to Lily, whose innocent babbling continued unabated, a stark contrast to the terror gripping the humans around her. From the corner of her eye, Olivia noticed a flicker of movement at the property's edge. A figure emerged from between the trees, a man in worn overalls and a faded flannel shirt, his weathered face creased with concern. He carried a rifle, held loosely but confidently in his gnarled hands. "Earl," Garrett breathed, recognizing the old man who lived deeper in the valley. Earl Mackenzie, a local legend of sorts, a reclusive former park ranger who had retreated from society after his wife's death years earlier. Earl assessed the situation with the calm efficiency of someone who had spent a lifetime in the wilderness. His eyes moved from the mother bear to the cub and the baby, then to the teenagers and Olivia. Without speaking, he whistled, a low, two-note sound that carried across the yard. The mother bear's head swiveled toward Earl, her attention momentarily diverted from her cub. The old man whistled again, then spoke in a voice like gravel scraping against stone. "Easy now, Mama. Nobody wants trouble here." To Olivia's amazement, Earl began to sing, a quiet, mournful tune in a language she didn't recognize. The melody rose and fell, strangely soothing despite the tension crackling through the air. The bear watched him, her aggressive stance softening almost imperceptibly. "What is he doing?" Tyler whispered to his brother. "Is he crazy?" But Garrett, transfixed by the unfolding scene, didn't answer. He had grown up hearing stories about Earl Mackenzie, how he could talk to animals, how he knew the secrets of the forest that had claimed his heart along with his wife's ashes. Until now, Garrett had dismissed these tales as small-town mythology. Now, he wasn't so sure. Earl continued singing as he slowly, painfully slowly, moved closer to the group. The mother bear followed his progress with wary eyes, but made no move to attack. When he was within 10 feet of them, Earl stopped and knelt, placing his rifle carefully on the ground. "The little one found safety with your baby," he said to Olivia, his voice gentle despite its roughness. "Bears are smarter than most give him credit for. She knows her cub isn't in danger from the little one." "But what do we do?" Olivia asked, tears streaming down her face. "I can't move, and Lily—" "We let nature take its course," Earl replied enigmatically. He reached into his pocket and produced a handful of berries, which he scattered on the ground between them and the mother bear. "Sometimes the wild has its own wisdom." The mother bear's nostrils flared as she caught the scent of the berries. She took another step forward, her attention divided between the food and her cub. Her second offspring peeked from behind her, curiosity overcoming fear. And then, in a moment that seemed to suspend the natural laws of the world, the second cub broke away from its mother. With the reckless bravery of youth, it bounded across the grass toward its sibling, and by extension, toward Lily. Olivia's heart nearly stopped. One bear cub with her daughter was miraculous. 2 seemed catastrophic. But before she could cry out, before anyone could react, Lily looked up at the approaching cub and let out a peal of delighted laughter that rang through the tense silence like a bell. The sound, so pure, so genuinely joyful, seemed to penetrate the veil separating human understanding from animal instinct. The second cub slowed its approach, head tilting in a gesture eerily similar to Lily's own expressions of curiosity. When it reached its sibling, the two cubs tumbled together in a brief tussle before settling on either side of the baby like furry bookends. Lily, clearly delighted by this development, patted each cub in turn, her innocent giggles continuing as if this were nothing more unusual than playing with stuffed animals in her crib. The mother bear made a sound, not a growl or a roar, but a chuffing noise that seemed almost questioning. Earl responded with another phrase in that strange, melodic language, his weathered hands moving in a gesture of peace. "What's happening?" Tyler asked, his voice thick with confusion. "What is he saying to it?" "It's Abenaki," Earl replied without taking his eyes off the bear. "My grandmother was full-blooded. She taught me the old ways, how to speak to the forest and its children." Under different circumstances, Garrett might have scoffed at this explanation, but the evidence before his eyes made mockery impossible. He watched as Earl continued his strange communication with the mother bear, who seemed to be growing calmer by the moment. "The bears around here have been pushed out of their territory by the new development on the North Ridge," Earl explained, addressing Olivia, but keeping his attention on the mother bear. "This mama probably got separated from her cubs during the confusion. She's not aggressive by nature, just frightened and protective." "But why aren't her cubs afraid of Lily?" Olivia asked, her maternal fear beginning to give way to wonder. Earl's weathered face creased in a smile. "Innocence recognizes innocence, ma'am. Your little one doesn't know to be afraid, and these cubs are young enough that they haven't learned to fear humans yet." He paused, watching as Lily continued to pat the cubs with gentle hands. "It's a rare thing to witness. Most folks go their whole lives without seeing the barrier between human and wild break down like this." A new sound cut through the morning air, the wail of approaching sirens. Someone must have seen the bear from the road and called authorities. The mother bear's head jerked up, her brief calm shattered by the unfamiliar noise. "No, no, no," Earl muttered, his expression darkening. "This is going to spook her." The mother bear rose up again, her massive form casting a shadow over her cubs and Lily. She released a warning roar that vibrated through Olivia's chest, setting off fresh waves of panic. "We need to get the baby," Tyler cried, his adolescent voice cracking. "She's going to attack." Earl held up a restraining hand. "Don't move, boy, you'll only make it worse." But Tyler, driven by genuine concern for Lily, took a step forward. The movement, however well-intentioned, triggered the mother bear's defensive instincts. She charged, not at Tyler, but at her cubs, clearly intending to collect them and flee from the approaching humans. Time seemed to slow as several things happened at once. The mother bear reached Lily and her cubs in 3 powerful strides. Garrett, in an unexpected display of courage, lunged for the baby. Earl called out a phrase in Abenaki, his voice rising above the approaching sirens. And Olivia, summoning strength born of maternal desperation, dragged herself across the remaining distance toward her daughter. The mother bear swatted at Garrett, her massive paw catching him across the chest and sending him sprawling. The blow, while powerful enough to knock him down, had been delivered with claws retracted, a warning rather than a killing strike. She gathered one cub in her mouth, carrying it as gently as a house cat would a kitten. The second cub, the one with the white patch on his chest who had first found the dollhouse, remained pressed against Lily. The baby, somehow sensing the gravity of the moment, had stopped giggling. She stared up at the enormous bear with wide, solemn eyes that held neither fear nor comprehension of danger. "Don't move," Earl cautioned Olivia, who had managed to pull herself within arm's reach of Lily. Let her take her cubs. The mother bear dropped to all fours, her first cub safely between her front legs. She nudged the second cub with her nose, urging him away from the baby. But the cub, in an act of defiance that seemed impossibly human, resisted. He pressed closer to Lily, releasing a plaintive whine. The sirens grew louder. Through the trees, Olivia could see flashing lights approaching on the main road. The mother bear, clearly agitated by the noise and commotion, nudged her reluctant cub more forcefully. She wants to leave, but the cub won't go, Earl explained unnecessarily, his voice tight with tension. This isn't good. In desperation, the mother bear gently clamped her jaws around her second cub, preparing to carry both offspring to safety. But as she lifted him away from Lily, something extraordinary happened. The baby reached out, her small fingers brushing against the cub's fur one last time. And in that touch, witnessed by everyone present, was a goodbye. A connection between species that transcended understanding. The mother bear, her cubs now secured, backed away from the humans. She cast one final, unreadable look at Lily before turning toward the forest. With surprising speed for her size, she lumbered across the yard, disappearing into the trees just as the first police car pulled up to the Whitaker property. Officers spilled from vehicles, weapons drawn, voices calling urgent questions across the yard. A paramedic knelt beside Olivia, asking about her injury while another collected Lily, checking the baby for any signs of harm. Bear, Tyler was explaining to a skeptical-looking officer. There was a mother bear and 2 cubs. They were right here with the baby. Garrett, winded but uninjured from the bear's warning swat, nodded emphatically. The old man sang to it, some Indian thing. It worked. The bear didn't hurt anyone. But when they turned to where Earl had been standing, the old man was gone. Like the bears, he had melted back into the forest, leaving only footprints in the damp earth as evidence of his presence. As Olivia was loaded onto a stretcher, Lily secure in the arms of a female paramedic, she caught a final glimpse of the torn dollhouse. Tilted on its foundation, damaged by weather and time, and the brief occupation of a bear cub, it somehow looked more complete than before, as if its purpose had finally been fulfilled. She wasn't afraid, Olivia told the paramedic, who clearly thought she was in shock. My daughter. She patted those bear cubs like they were puppies, and they didn't hurt her. They protected her. That's nice, ma'am, the paramedic said soothingly, obviously not believing a word. Let's get you to the hospital. Olivia wanted to insist, to make them understand the miracle they had missed, but exhaustion and pain washed over her, making her eyelids heavy. The last thing she saw before closing her eyes was Lily's face, peaceful and smiling, seemingly unaffected by her extraordinary encounter. But something had changed in her daughter, something Olivia wouldn't recognize until much later. For in that brief connection with wildness, with nature in its purest form, Lily Harper had been marked by wonder, and such marks, once left upon the soul, never truly fade. 3 days later, Noah Harper carried a stack of mail into his wife's hospital room, where she was preparing to be discharged. Her broken ankle, now properly set and encased in a purple cast, rested on a pillow while Lily napped in a portable crib beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" Noah asked, dropping a kiss on Olivia's forehead. He had heard the story of the bear encounter from multiple sources: Olivia, the paramedics, the police, and even the Sloan brothers, whose version had grown more dramatic with each retelling. Like most of the town, he believed it was a case of mistaken identity or exaggeration. Perhaps a large dog that had approached the property, or a bear sighted from a distance that imagination had placed closer to his daughter. "Better," Olivia replied, though frustration simmered beneath her calm exterior. No one believed what had really happened. not even her husband. The official police report listed a bear sighting on adjacent property, nothing more. The torn dollhouse had been demolished by town workers as a safety hazard, removing the final piece of physical evidence from the extraordinary encounter. "You got something strange in the mail," Noah said, flipping through the stack of envelopes. "No return address." He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Olivia opened it curiously, tearing away the wrapping to reveal a carved wooden bear cub, no larger than her palm. The craftsmanship was exquisite, every detail perfect, from the texture of the fur to the intelligence in the tiny eyes. Most striking was the small white patch carved into the chest, just like the cub who had found shelter in the dollhouse. A small note accompanied the carving, written in a spidery, ancient-looking hand. "Some encounters leave marks unseen but deeply felt. Your daughter touched the wild, and the wild touched her in return. Such connections are sacred. Watch for the signs as she grows. They will be there for those with eyes to see." E.M. Olivia clutched the carving to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. Finally, confirmation that she wasn't crazy, that the miraculous encounter had been real. "What is it?" Noah asked, concerned by her emotional reaction. "A gift," Olivia replied simply, not yet ready to share this validation with her skeptical husband. "From someone who understands." In her crib, Lily stirred from her nap. As her eyes fluttered open, she made a soft sound, not her usual babbling or crying, but a gentle chuffing noise eerily similar to the sound the mother bear had made in that tense moment of recognition. It was the first of many signs that would appear as Lily grew, small reminders of the day she had formed a connection with the wild heart of the world. Olivia placed the wooden carving on her bedside table, positioned so that the morning light caught the white patch on its chest. Outside the hospital window, at the edge of the parking lot where pavement gave way to trees, she thought she glimpsed a familiar figure, an old man in overalls and a flannel shirt, watching the hospital with knowing eyes. But when she blinked, he was gone, and she couldn't be certain he had ever been there at all. 6 months passed, and winter blanketed Pinewood Valley in snow. The Whitaker property had new owners now, a young couple from the city who had no knowledge of the events that had transpired in their backyard before their arrival. They had cleared away the hydrangea bushes and replanted the garden with neat rows of winter-resistant shrubs. No trace remained of the torn dollhouse or the extraordinary encounter it had hosted. In the yellow bungalow next door, Lily Harper celebrated her first birthday. She had begun walking recently, unsteady but determined steps that carried her from furniture to wall to outstretched arms with growing confidence. Her vocabulary consisted of the usual first words, mama, dada, no, but also included a strange growling sound that she made whenever she spotted dogs or other animals, as if attempting to communicate with them in their own language. Olivia, her ankle long since healed, had written a children's story inspired by Lily's encounter with the bear cubs. Her editor had loved it, suggesting it could become a series if the first book sold well. The story changed some details. The dollhouse became a hollow tree. The injured mother became a babysitter, but the heart remained the same. A baby girl who could communicate with animals in ways adults had forgotten how to do. In her quiet moments, Olivia often found herself wondering about Earl Mackenzie. After leaving the hospital, she had tried to find information about the old man, only to discover he was something of a local mystery. Some said he had died years ago, others insisted he still lived in a cabin deep in Black Ridge Forest, and a few claimed he was merely a folk tale, a personification of the wilderness that surrounded their valley. The wooden bear carving sat on Lily's windowsill, bathed in moonlight on this snowy January evening as Olivia tucked her daughter into bed. The white patch on its chest seemed to glow in the darkness. a reminder of the inexplicable connection that had formed on that rain-washed morning half a year ago. "Sweet dreams, my brave girl," Olivia whispered, pressing a kiss to Lily's forehead. As she turned to leave, Lily made that strange chuffing sound again. Olivia paused, glancing back at her daughter. Lily's attention was fixed on the window, her expression one of delighted recognition. Following her gaze, Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. Outside, standing in the pristine snow of their backyard, was a bear cub. Larger now, but unmistakable with the white patch on his chest. He stood on his hind legs, front paws pressed against the fence that separated the properties, dark eyes reflecting the moonlight as he stared at Lily's window. For a moment, Olivia considered calling Noah, who was downstairs watching television, but something held her back. An instinctive understanding that this moment wasn't meant to be shared with skeptics or authorities. This was between Lily and the cub, a continuation of the connection that had begun in the torn dollhouse. The cub remained still for several heartbeats, as if ensuring his message, whatever it might be, had been received. Then he dropped to all fours and lumbered across the yard, disappearing into the shadows at the forest's edge. Behind him, barely visible in the darkness, Olivia thought she glimpsed a larger shape, the mother bear, waiting patiently for her cub to complete his mysterious mission. And beyond them both, a human silhouette, tall and straight despite its obvious age, lifted a hand in silent greeting before melting into the forest alongside the bears. Lily babbled happily in her crib, untroubled by the encounter. Olivia stood frozen by the window, tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the continuation of a miracle she had thought was finished. Whatever had happened that day at the torn dollhouse, whatever connection had formed between her daughter and the wild creature who had sought shelter there, it hadn't ended when the bears returned to the forest. It had only just begun. 5 years passed, transforming Lily from a toddler into a kindergartner with copper-colored pigtails and eyes that seemed to contain forests within them. The wooden bear carving still sat on her windowsill, though its meaning had evolved from a mysterious gift into a cherished talisman. Every night before bed, Lily touched the white patch on its chest and whispered secrets only she understood. Olivia had published 3 books in her Wild Child series, each more successful than the last. The stories followed a little girl named Willow, who could speak with animals and help them solve problems in the forest. Readers and critics alike praised the authenticity of the animal behavior and the emotional resonance of the stories, unaware that they were born from real events. Noah, initially skeptical of Olivia's bear encounter story, had gradually come to accept that something extraordinary had happened that day, though he attributed it to the unique fearlessness of babies rather than any mystical connection. He had never witnessed the bear cub's return visits, which occurred with mysterious regularity on the night of each full moon. These moonlit encounters remained a secret shared only between mother and daughter, and perhaps with Earl Mackenzie, whose shadowy presence Olivia occasionally glimpsed at the forest's edge during these visitations. The Harpers had added a second child to their family, a boy named Max, now 2 years old, with Noah's dark hair and a temperament as sunny as his sister's was thoughtful. Unlike Lily, Max showed no unusual affinity for animals, though he adored his sister, and followed her like a devoted puppy whenever she allowed it. On this particular autumn morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table, her expression unusually solemn as she pushed cereal around her bowl. Olivia recognized the signs of her daughter's preoccupation, the slight furrow between her brows, the way her eyes occasionally drifted toward the window, as if listening to voices only she could hear. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, sliding into the chair beside her. Lily shrugged, a surprisingly adult gesture for a 6-year-old. Miss Winters says we're going on a field trip to the new nature center, the one by Blackridge Forest. The nature center had been built the previous spring, part of a conservation initiative following protests against further development in the valley. Olivia had covered the story for the newspaper, interviewing environmentalists and developers with equal rigor. The resulting compromise had preserved much of the forest while allowing limited construction on the valley's eastern edge. "That sounds fun," Olivia offered, though she sensed there was more to Lily's mood than simple field trip anxiety. "They have animals there," Lily continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "In cages." Ah, Olivia thought. That explained her daughter's distress. From an early age, Lily had shown unusual empathy toward captive animals. A trip to the county fair when she was 4 had ended in tears when they passed the 4-H exhibits. The sight of rabbits and chickens in small cages had triggered such distress that they'd had to leave before seeing the promised fireworks. "They're not exactly cages, honey," Olivia explained gently. "The Nature Center rehabilitates injured wildlife. They help animals that would die in the wild and release them when they're better." "But what if they're not all better and still have to stay there?" Lily persisted, finally meeting her mother's eyes. Something in her gaze made Olivia shiver, a depth of understanding that seemed beyond her years. What if they want to go home? Before Olivia could formulate a response, Max toddled into the kitchen, clutching his favorite stuffed frog. "Lily, play!" he demanded, his limited vocabulary compensated by enthusiastic gestures. The somber mood broken, Lily managed a smile for her brother. "We need to get ready for school, Max, maybe later." Watching her children interact, Olivia felt a familiar mix of wonder and unease. Lily was a remarkable child by any standard, intelligent, empathetic, mature beyond her years. But there were aspects of her development that Olivia couldn't explain to the pediatrician or kindergarten teacher without sounding unhinged. The way animals responded to her presence, growing calm even when injured or frightened. The uncanny accuracy with which she predicted weather changes. The nights when Olivia found her daughter standing at her bedroom window, having conversations with seemingly empty darkness, conversations after which Lily would report that my bear friend had warned of hunters in the forest, or a storm approaching, or new cubs being born. Noah dismissed these incidents as an act of imagination, coupled with the power of suggestion from Olivia's stories about the bear encounter. But Olivia knew better. Something had indeed begun that day at the torn dollhouse, something that continued to unfold in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. The Blackridge Valley Nature and Wildlife Rehabilitation Center occupied a modern building of glass and sustainable timber, nestled at the forest's edge, where once the Mackenzie family had owned acres of undeveloped land. The property had been donated anonymously after Earl's disappearance 2 years earlier. At least, that was the official story. Some locals whispered that Earl had never legally owned the land at all, that he had simply lived there as his ancestors had for generations, and that the donation was merely a convenient fiction created by lawyers to justify the construction. Lily's kindergarten class filed from the yellow school bus into the center's airy lobby, where a young woman with a clipboard and a name tag identifying her as Marina, wildlife educator, greeted them with practiced enthusiasm. "Welcome to Blackridge Valley Nature Center," Marina announced, her voice rising above the excited chatter of 20 kindergartners. "Today, you'll learn about the animals that share our valley, and how we help the ones that get sick or hurt." As Marina led them through exhibits displaying taxidermied specimens and interactive screens showing migration patterns and food chains, Lily lagged behind. Her teacher, Ms. Winters, noticed her reluctance and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Everything okay, Lily? Aren't you excited to see the animals?" Lily nodded automatically, though her expression remained troubled. "The real animals, not the pretend ones," she clarified, gesturing toward a stuffed owl whose glass eyes stared sightlessly from its perch. Miss Winters smiled, misunderstanding. "Yes, we'll see the live animals soon. That's the best part." The rehabilitation area occupied the center's rear section, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest. Here, enclosures of various sizes housed animals in different stages of recovery. Birds with splinted wings, a fox with a healing leg, squirrels too young to survive on their own. The children pressed their faces against the glass barriers, pointing and exclaiming at each resident. All except Lily, who stood apart, her hands clasped tightly before her. Her eyes weren't on the visible enclosures but fixed on a door marked "Staff Only" at the far end of the room. Something pulled at her attention. A presence she felt rather than saw. A familiar energy that called to her across the space. When Marina herded the class toward a presentation area where a handler waited with a rehabilitated hawk perched on his gloved fist, Lily quietly slipped away. The staff-only door had been left slightly ajar, a careless oversight, or perhaps something more intentional. She glanced back once to ensure no one was watching, then slipped through the narrow opening. Beyond lay a corridor lined with treatment rooms. The antiseptic smell reminded Lily of the doctor's office, but beneath it lurked earthier scents, fur and feathers, the musk of wild things confined. She followed her instincts, drawn toward the corridor's end, where another door stood closed but unlocked. This room was different, darker, with fewer windows. Heavy black curtains covered the glass, allowing only thin slivers of light to penetrate. As Lily's eyes adjusted, she made out several larger enclosures, more substantial than those in the public area. A sign on the wall read, "Quarantine, Limited Contact." And there, in the enclosure farthest from the door, lay a bear. Not a cub anymore, but a young adult male, his black fur glossy under the dim lights. A white patch marked his chest, unmistakable even in the shadows. "Friend," Lily whispered, the word emerging as that strange chuffing sound she had made since infancy. The bear's head lifted immediately, his ears swiveling toward her voice. He rose to his feet, somewhat unsteadily, Lily noticed, and approached the front of the enclosure. When he reached the reinforced glass, he pressed one paw against it, as if in greeting. Without hesitation, Lily placed her small hand opposite his massive paw. Through the barrier, she felt a connection snap into place, the same one she experienced during the full moon visits, but stronger here, with no physical distance between them. "What happened to you?" she asked, not expecting a verbal response yet, understanding perfectly when the bear lowered his head to reveal a partially healed wound behind his ear. Someone had shot at him, the bullet grazing rather than penetrating. The physical wound was healing, but Lily sensed his deeper distress, confusion, anger, the disorientation of captivity. "You should be free," she told him, tears welling in her eyes. "This is wrong." The bear made a low sound, not quite a growl, more a rumble of agreement. Lily became aware of movement behind her, someone entering the room, footsteps approaching cautiously. "You shouldn't be in here, little one," said a voice, gentle but firm. Lily turned, expecting to find an angry staff member ready to escort her back to her class. Instead, she found herself facing an elderly man with copper skin and silver hair pulled back in a long braid. His eyes, dark and knowing, assessed her with neither surprise nor judgment. "You know him," the man stated rather than asked, gesturing toward the bear. Lily nodded, unafraid despite being caught where she shouldn't be. Something about the old man reminded her of the shadowy figure she sometimes glimpsed during the full moon visits. Not Earl Mackenzie, who had vanished years ago, but someone who carried a similar energy of wild wisdom. "He's my friend," she said simply, "since I was a baby." The old man smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "Yes, I see the mark of that friendship on you. My grandson would call it Nidobasqua, forest child." He studied her face for a moment before adding, "I am Daniel Redbird. I work with the animals here." "I'm Lily. Why is he locked up? He should be free." Daniel sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "The hunters who shot him reported him as aggressive. The law says any bear that threatens humans must be evaluated before release." His expression darkened. "Some here want to transfer him to a zoo. Others argue for more permanent solutions." Lily's hand pressed harder against the glass. "No, he never hurt anyone. He's gentle." "You speak with great certainty for a small girl," Daniel observed, though his tone suggested curiosity rather than disbelief. "He visited me every full moon since I was a baby. He never hurt anyone," Lily repeated, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Please don't let them hurt him." Daniel knelt before her, bringing their eyes level. "The world is not always kind to those who walk between realms, little Nidobasqua. Your bear friend exists in the wild world, you in the human one. Few understand the bridge between, as you do." He hesitated, then added, "As Earl did." "You knew Earl?" Lily asked, surprised by the mention of the mysterious old man her mother occasionally spoke of. "He was my cousin," Daniel replied. "It was he who told me to come work here, in this last message before he walked into the deep forest." A sad smile touched his lips. "He said I would meet a child who carried the mark of the bear. I think he meant you." Before Lily could respond, the door burst open, revealing a frantic Miss Winters and an equally agitated Marina. "Lily Harper, we've been looking everywhere for you," Miss Winters exclaimed, rushing forward to grasp Lily's hand. "You know better than to wander off during a field trip." "I'm sorry, that's my fault," Daniel interjected smoothly. "I found this young lady looking lost and offered to show her our special residence." He gestured to the bear, who had retreated to the back of his enclosure, once again just an animal to the adult observers. She seemed particularly interested in this fellow. Marina frowned, her clipboard clutched tightly against her chest. "This area is restricted, Doctor." "Redbird. The children aren't supposed to see the quarantine cases." "Sometimes exceptions must be made," Daniel replied with a placidity that seemed to deflate Marina's indignation. "No harm done. The young lady and I were just finishing our tour." Ms. Winters, more concerned with recovering her missing student than with protocol violations, ushered Lily toward the door. "The rest of the class is having lunch on the observation deck. Let's join them before they eat all the cookies." Lily allowed herself to be led away, but at the doorway she turned back. Daniel Redbird stood beside the bear's enclosure, one hand pressed against the glass in the exact spot where Lily's had been moments before. He met her eyes across the room and nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both promise and warning. On the bus ride back to school, while the other children chattered excitedly about the hawk and fox they had seen, Lily sat quietly beside the window, watching the trees blur past. Her encounter with the captive bear, her bear, as she had always thought of him, had left her with a hollow feeling in her chest. For the first time, she understood that the connection they shared could bring pain as well as wonder. That night, as Olivia tucked her into bed, Lily finally shared what had happened. "Mom," she began, her voice small in the dimness of her bedroom, "my bear friend is in trouble." Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, her expression carefully neutral. Over the years, she had learned to navigate these conversations without dismissing Lily's experiences or encouraging what Noah still sometimes called elaborate fantasies. "What kind of trouble, sweetheart?" Lily explained about finding the bear at the nature center, about the wound behind his ear, about Daniel Redbird and his connection to Earl. As the story unfolded, Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the window. The details were too specific, too consistent with things Lily couldn't possibly know, like Earl having a cousin, which Olivia herself had only discovered while researching her books. "He said some people want to send my friend to a zoo or even kill him," Lily concluded, her voice breaking. "We have to help him, Mom. We have to set him free." Olivia brushed a strand of copper hair from her daughter's forehead, buying time as she considered her response. The rational part of her, the journalist trained to verify facts, to question extraordinary claims, wanted to soothe Lily with assurances that the Nature Center professionals would make the best decision for the bear's welfare. But another part of her, the part that had witnessed a baby girl form an inexplicable bond with a wild creature, knew that rational explanations had long since failed to encompass the reality of her daughter's connection with the natural world. "Let me see what I can find out," she finally said, a careful compromise. "I know some people at the Nature Center from when I covered the opening. Maybe they can tell me more about this bear." Lily nodded solemnly, accepting this partial promise. "He'll come tonight," she whispered. "It's the full moon." After Lily fell asleep, Olivia stood at the kitchen window, watching the forest's edge where the full moon cast silver light across the yard. Noah had taken Max to visit his parents for the weekend, leaving mother and daughter alone in the house. The silence felt expectant, as if the very air was holding its breath. Shortly after midnight, movement at the tree line caught Olivia's attention. She squinted, expecting to see the familiar form of a bear emerging from the shadows. Instead, a human figure detached itself from the darkness, tall and straight-backed despite obvious age, silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. Daniel Redbird approached the house with unhurried steps, stopping at the edge of the yard as if awaiting an invitation to proceed. Olivia hesitated only briefly before opening the back door and stepping onto the porch. "Doctor? Redbird?" she called softly, not wanting to wake Lily. The old man inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Mrs. Harper, your daughter said you would be watching." "How did you find our house?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "The bear knows the way," Daniel replied simply, as if this explained everything. "May I come in? There are matters we should discuss, and the night grows cold." At the kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs of tea, Olivia studied the man her daughter had met just hours before. Up close, the resemblance to Earl was subtle but unmistakable, the same weathered dignity, the same eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "Your daughter carries a rare gift," Daniel said without preamble, "a connection to the natural world that most humans have forgotten how to nurture." "Because of what happened when she was a baby," Olivia said, half statement, half question. Daniel smiled. "The encounter with the bear cub opened a door, yes, but the capacity was always within her, as it is within all children, to varying degrees. Most lose it as they grow, as the human world demands more of their attention and rewards conformity over connection." He sipped his tea before adding, "Lily has managed to keep that door open longer than most. And you believe this bear at the center is the same cub she encountered 5 years ago." "I know it is," Daniel replied with quiet certainty. "As does Lily, as do you, though you question your knowing." Olivia couldn't deny the truth of his words. Part of her had recognized the description immediately: the white chest patch, the gentle nature Lily attributed to him. "What will happen to him?" she asked. Daniel's expression grew somber. "The director has scheduled a meeting for Monday to determine his fate. The bullet wound is healing well, but the report filed by the hunters labels him as aggressive. There is pressure to err on the side of caution." "Meaning euthanasia?" Olivia said, the word bitter on her tongue. "Or permanent captivity?" Daniel nodded. "Neither fate honors what he is. Neither acknowledges his right to freedom." "What can we do?" Olivia asked, surprised by her own willingness to accept this strange reality, to become party to whatever Daniel might propose. The old man's eyes glinted in the kitchen's low light. "First, we must speak with the one most concerned in this matter." They found Lily standing at her bedroom window, fully awake despite the late hour. She showed no surprise at seeing Daniel, merely nodding as if his arrival was expected. "He didn't come," she said, disappointment heavy in her voice. "He always comes on the full moon." "He cannot leave the center physically," Daniel explained gently, "but his spirit reaches out even through barriers. That is what woke you tonight." Lily nodded again, accepting this explanation with the unquestioning belief of childhood. "How do we help him?" Daniel knelt beside her, much as he had done at the nature center. "The human world has rules and processes, Nidobasqua. We must work within them when possible, around them when necessary." He glanced up at Olivia. "Your mother has influence in this valley. Her words reach many ears." Understanding dawned on Olivia. "You want me to write about the bear, to make a case for his release?" "More than that," Daniel said. "I want you to tell the true story. How a bear cub sought shelter in a dollhouse. How a baby girl showed kindness when others showed fear. How a connection formed that defies conventional understanding." "No one will believe it," Olivia objected. "I've never shared the full story publicly because it sounds impossible." "Perhaps," Daniel conceded. "But truth has its own power, its own resonance. Some will dismiss it, but others will recognize it." He turned back to Lily. "And we will need your help too, little one, your testimony." Later, after Daniel had left with a promise to return the following evening, Olivia sat at her computer, fingers poised over the keyboard. The blank document before her seemed both invitation and challenge. How did one translate the inexplicable into words that would convince skeptics? How did one advocate for a bear based on a connection that most would dismiss as childish fantasy or maternal delusion? In the end, she began simply, "5 years ago, my 8-month-old daughter encountered a bear cub in an abandoned dollhouse. What happened next changed both their lives forever." The words flowed after that, the whole story spilling onto the page in all its impossible truth. The torn dollhouse, the injured ankle, the Sloan brothers, Earl Mackenzie's intervention, the mother bear's arrival, and the miraculous moment when Lily had touched the frightened cub, forming a bond that had endured through years of full moon visits. By dawn, Olivia had written not a newspaper article but a personal testimony, raw, honest, and unvarnished. Whether anyone would publish it, whether anyone would believe it, she couldn't say. But the truth was now recorded, a first step toward whatever came next in this strange journey. As the sun rose over Pinewood Valley, casting long shadows across the yard where a torn dollhouse had once stood, Lily stirred in her bed. Her first words upon waking were not of dreams or breakfast or plans for the day, but a simple declaration that carried the weight of destiny.